Hi there, I'm Jaison Gardner. It's a pleasure to be before you all. Thanks for considering this very important issue. A little bit about myself. Some of you all have seen me before petitioning for various issues from affordable housing to way back in the 90s when it was a curfew or when I was a teenager, but I'm here today for something much more personal and practical. I'm here to talk about the raise of minimum wage, and in particular, talk about tipped workers who are oftentimes not part of the national conversation or even the local conversation. When I'm not an activist or petitioning City Hall, I am a restaurant server, and I have been for about 6 years. I've worked at some of Louisville's most celebrated restaurants, including Lynn's Paradise Cafe, which most of you probably know is no longer around, but you probably heard about some of the issues going on in the way the workers were treated. And in my opinion, restaurant workers and other tipped employees are often the forgotten people who, when it comes to employment rights and labor rights, were often forgot about. And so I just want to talk to you all a bit about that today. As you all know, most of our city's restaurant workers rely almost exclusively on tips for our paycheck. So we bring them a paycheck, it says $0. We rely on tips. And the federal minimum wage is $2.13 an hour, and that's how much servers in Kentucky make. And that has not seen an increase since 1991. It's been over 23 years since tipped employees like servers and bartenders have seen an increase to our minimum wage. And so please, I invite you to think about how much you made 22 years ago in the profession that you were in, and think about making the same amount of money today, 23 years later, performing just as hard as an employee, providing just as wonderful work, but not seeing an increase to how much you make. So as I mentioned, the $2.13 an hour has not increased since 1991. And considering inflation, $2.13 in 1991 is about $1. It was worth about $1.24 today. So that means the $2 you may have in your purse or your pocket only goes about half as far as it did then. According to a 2009 report, the tipped minimum wage of $2.13 has lost 36% of its value, and as a result, waiters and waitresses are 3 times as likely to be under the poverty line as the general workforce. As you all know, no one can survive off $2.13 an hour, and no one should have to. I encourage you all to look to states like New Jersey, where they are considering raising the minimum wage for servers from $2.13 to $3.39 by the end of this year, and to $5.93 by the end of next year. That's being led by Assemblywoman Shavonda Sumter. I encourage you to look to New Jersey. Also, President Obama has also supported raising the federal minimum wage for tipped employees to $4.90. And I'll just ad-lib here. Certainly our paychecks are contingent upon the whims, the generosity of our customers. There is no guarantee. Sometimes you make a lot of money if it's derby, and then sometimes you don't make very much money, and that's why we're oftentimes at greater risk for poverty, for homelessness, etc., when it comes to supporting ourselves and our family members. So I just encourage you all to always consider servers, bartenders, manicurists, other tipped employees as part of this discussion. And if you all move forward, please consider bringing along tipped employees with you.
Okay,
thank you.
Councilman James has a question for you.
Yes, sir.
A couple questions. For everybody listening at home, a lot of times we talk about the minimum wage, and then they hear us talk about tipped servers and workers, and that there's a difference.
Yes, sir.
And so can you put into practical terms what that really means as an employee yourself? If a restaurant, say one evening, doesn't have a lot of customers, or you don't happen to get a large number of customers, what does that really mean to you in the wages that you take home that week?
Certainly. So, for example, I used to work in the private sector for the county clerk's office. And so whether or not it was the first of the month that we had a lot of folks there to get their tags renewed, or the middle of the month that no one came in to get their tags renewed, I still knew how much I was taking home to pay my rent, to pay my utilities, provide for child care, etc. As a restaurant worker, if it's derby and it's a pretty lucrative time of the year, I may make $100, but then say it's Thunder over Louisville and everyone's downtown and rent is due in a couple of days, I may make $20. So no matter, and I'm still going to be at work the same amount of time. I'm still going to be there for that restaurant should something happen, should folks come in. And so for us, it's a matter of frankly, but the instability of it all. You know, folks are led to believe that servers make $20 an hour, $15 an hour, which is more than the average Joe makes, but also consider that we don't have paid sick leave. We don't have a vacation day. So any day I miss work for a sick child, a sick family member, my own sickness, I'm not getting compensated for that day. There are also no other benefits like health insurance. So if I make $20 per hour, I'm still required to pay for my own health insurance, office visits, all those things at full price. So that's why servers, waiters, waitresses are oftentimes 3 times at risk to be at poverty than even your average minimum wage worker at McDonald's or White Castle, for example.
Thank you. So what you're really saying to me is if you don't have a large number of customers, or you have customers that don't tip well.
Yes, sir. I go home empty-handed.
The only thing you make that week is that $2.13 per
And
hour.
actually, we don't even make that. We never see that. That actually goes to the government to pay our taxes. So we receive a paycheck, a paper paycheck, but it will always read $0.00. And then it will outline below that in theory our employer paid so much to federal taxes on our behalf. And so we never even see that $2.13 an hour. So don't be misled to think that we at least get that. That goes to pay our taxes. And then we find ourselves in April, for example, still owing the government another several $1,000s in what our employer may say that we made. And so we never even see the $2.13 an hour. We literally live off of the tips we make from a day-to-day basis.
I don't know if you saw the previous hearing we had when we talked about minimum wage, but there was a person representing the Restaurant Association.
Yes, sir.
And they advised that all of their members that own restaurants, if a employee does not make tips that night, they make up for it and pay what would be the natural minimum wage, which is currently held by other hourly workers. Is that not correct?
So that is also in theory, and if you all just did a very simple Google search, you'll see that the oversight of that is very hit and miss. In fact, it's very easy for employers to not make that up. Frankly, a lot of servers don't want to, they're afraid of losing their jobs, frankly. To be very frank, there's also a lot of undocumented people who work in the restaurant business. And so any attempt at raising a red flag, questioning your employer about those questions that you don't understand, or about making up the difference, it can oftentimes lead to being fired. As you all saw what happened with Lynn's Paradise Cafe here in the city, our most celebrated restaurant, you all were able to see that there was some sketchy things going on. And certainly there are restaurateurs who are opposed to raising a wage, but my argument for that is it's also not it's not your financial best interest to build an accessible restaurant, to build a handicap ramp. But it's something that we have to do, and it's something we look to government to do, to say, if you have a restaurant, folks in wheelchairs, folks who are disabled, folks who are blind deserve to come into your restaurant, even if it means you have to spend a little bit of extra money on a ramp. So they're the business of dollars and cents, and government is in the interest of public welfare. And so that would be my argument as to why I look to you all to do what business owners sometimes may or may not do. And there are some organizations that do the right thing. Like there's states like New Jersey and Montana and Washington State where their tip minimum wages for servers are $9 an hour. And so it's worked elsewhere, and business has not crumbled, and life has gone on. So
Thank you.
yes, sir. Thank you all.
You have questions?
Mr. Gardner,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm a bit concerned about what you just shared, because it sounds like there's opportunity for wage theft for
yes.
tipped employees, but that is another issue for another time, including at the state level. What do you say to critics of raising the minimum wage, that, especially for tipped employees, that for those of you who are tipped workers, that's supplemental income for another job that you should be working?
In terms of getting a second job to make ends meet, in other words?
That a $2.13 per hour job really is not designed to be a full-time job that pays your bills.
And I think I think what that speaks to is also an issue of dehumanizing restaurant workers. And we often think of people who wait tables or do our nails or carry our bags as somehow less than, and that somehow the amount of effort I put into waiting tables somehow is less valuable than the effort someone gives to being a clerk of the Metro Council, or that someone gives to driving TARC. And frankly, we couldn't survive without service industry professionals, whether it's TARC drivers, police officers, EMS, people who work at McDonald's or White Castle. And so this for me is a career. This allows me the flexibility to come to City Hall tonight to speak to you all. If I had a job that I worked the third shift, I could not be here to petition government, which is certainly a right that I have. And so I don't think that the waiting tables is a job to be ashamed of. I don't think that it is a temporary job. It's not a job for teenagers. There are those of us who love what we do. As you all go to Churchill Downs and see plenty of adults and grown folk and professional folk and educated folk who love making this a world-class city. And without folks who are waiting tables at Churchill Downs or the casino or other places regionally in Kentuckiana, this wouldn't be the world-class city that it is. So for me, it's very much a job, and I'm entitled to a fair paycheck just as anyone else is who works hard for what they do. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Gardner.